I just want to welcome to the panel for the COPD, a story of resilience, advocacy, and care. Now, this is brought to you by our platinum sponsor, Sanofi Regeneron. Yes, clap it up for our sponsors. You know, this is brought to you free, free. Somebody got to pay for it. So please welcome back Dr. Margaret Alibi, Director of Patient Advocacy of Regeneron, whose leadership spans pharmacy, coaching, and equity-centered strategy. Dr. Alibi will now introduce the rest of this panel.
Hello again, you all. It is such a pleasure to be with you again and in a different mode. So the last time you saw me, we were talking about skin matters. Now we're going to be talking about lung matters. And I'm really excited to introduce you all to my colleague, Schmitt, who is with Sanofi representing our COPD Public Affairs, and Eugena Brooks, who is going to be sharing her story. Now, I got to warn y'all about Miss Brooks. Okay, maybe I shouldn't warn you about her. I'm going to let y'all find out. So I hope you're ready. But again, we're really excited to be back in front of you today talking about a condition by the name of COPD. How many folks in the room know what COPD stands for? Shout it out. Man, y'all are educated. Black Health Matters is doing its thing. Yes, we are here to talk to you today about chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And this is a disease that worsens over time. It is known to cause permanent lung damage. And COPD is also a debilitating condition that impacts people both physically and mentally. So I'm sure you're hearing a theme here from all of the panels that you've been attending today, where we're making it very clear that there is no condition without a mental component to it. And so I'm sure Lisa and Eugena are going to be hitting on that for you as they get into it. But when we think about the physical symptoms of COPD, they include breathlessness, excessive mucus production and cough, and chest tightening. This is caused by a decrease in the lungs' function to operate. This also causes exhaustion and fatigue. And over time, people that are living with COPD often feel embarrassed from these symptoms because when they're out in public, their movement is limited. And it's very challenging for folks to understand what's wrong with them because they can't see sometimes any physical appearance of the condition. So when we think about how this condition shows up mentally, it impacts the everyday activities like walking. Walking to the mailbox can be a major task. Standing up to cook your favorite meal, even getting dressed up for the day can be a major task that then begins to impact a person's mental health. So people living with and or suffering from COPD are not the only people that have to be considered. It's also their family, friends, and caretakers that are impacted by this condition. And so the conversation today isn't just about understanding COPD from a clinical perspective, because that's not what we're here to do. We're going to have a conversation, right? And we really hope that what you hear in this conversation today is Eugena's personal experience from living with this condition and understanding how empathy, support, and a collective effort has helped to bring visibility to COPD in this community. So without further ado, I am going to hand the floor over to Lisa, who is going to talk to you today about Eugena as they explore Eugena's journey. Thank you.
We'll play microphone swap. That was it too. We'll share. That'll be great. We'll share. Well, thank you, Eugena, for being here. Let's just jump right in. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself, where you live, there we got one for you, where you came from this morning, and a little bit about what you used to do?
Okay, yes, I'm a native New Yorker. Brooklyn is in the house. and I suffer from COPD. I was a social worker all my life, and now I am a patient advocate to make sure that all of you understand what you're up against, how to take care of yourselves, and keep it moving.
Great. Well, thank you for traveling over from Brooklyn today. So just give everyone a little sense of what your life was like before your COPD diagnosis.
My life was fun. Okay? I'm going to tell it. It was wonderful. I was a very busy, active person. I worked like a dog all day, and I partied all night. I lied to you not. I danced and danced and danced some more. I was the disco queen, for real. Okay? And it was great. I raised my family. I was involved in athletics. I was involved in community organizations, naturally being a social worker. I was involved. I was like horse manure. I was everywhere.
And then what happened? How long ago did you start experiencing those first COPD symptoms, and sort of tell people what those were like for you?
Believe it or not, I was in my 30s when I started having repeated bouts of bronchitis. I no longer got a cold anymore. I got bronchitis. And it was bronchitis, that's what the doctor would tell me. I would have to take antibiotics, and I would get multiple bouts 2 or 3 times during the winter, and then it became season changes as well. That this would happen to me, and it started like that, and it just got progressively worse. Bronchitis became pneumonia, and finally, 20 years ago, I crashed and burned. I had a whole complete system shut down, and I became disabled.
And so what was that diagnosis process like for you before that crash and burn? Or is that where you found out your diagnosis?
In and out of the hospital. I mean, I would have these spells, and they got progressively worse. And then I went from doctor visits and antibiotics to visits to the hospital and hospital stays until it affected and impacted other things in my health system. And like I said, I finally had a system shut down. Nothing was working. I was honestly right around the corner from dead. And I couldn't work anymore. I had to come out of work, and I had to make taking care of my health my job.
Your job. And who diagnosed you? Was it when you were in the hospital? Who said you have COPD?
Yeah, doctors in the hospital first caught it, and then I had to get a primary care physician to help me deal with maintenance. It started like that, and progressively had to add on specialists for this and that and the next thing. Mm-hmm. Naturally, for the COPD came the pulmonologist. All terms that I never wanted anything to do. The funny part is that my mother was a registered nurse, and I wanted nothing to do with the family business. Look at where I am. You know she's in heaven laughing at me, right?
Especially knowing your story, which they don't know yet. Don't give it away. So early on, you got system crash, you're hospitalized, you get this diagnosis. Where was all the information? How did you get information?
There was no information. Half of what was wrong with me, they didn't even know could affect a woman. Okay, the COPD, there was no information. We were still in a world where you went to the doctor, you did what the doctor said. Hopefully he gave you a pill that would fix it. You moved on with your life. Only I ran into something that became so severe that moving on wasn't an option anymore.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something that you think of COPD, you don't think women right away. You don't think a Black woman right away.
when they said chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, they lost me after chronic. And there was 3 extra words I wasn't trying to understand. Okay, number 1. Number 2, I'd never heard of it before in my life. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anybody who did know what it was. I didn't know anybody who had it. Not at work, not at home, not in the family, not anywhere. I never heard of this before.
Right. And there, like you said, there wasn't a lot of information.
There wasn't
so
a lot
you just
of
had to get it
information.
from your doctor or your pulmonologist.
Do what the doctor says and you shut up.
Right. Not anymore. That's not how you roll now. So can you help everyone just kind of understand or give some examples of how COPD impacts your daily activities? Like the things that you do either physically or mentally,
You
what
know,
that's like.
it impacts everything. You literally have to learn to adapt. You have to rethink, refigure, and adapt how you go about your daily activities because the game completely changes. A conversation on the phone can take your breath away. Just a simple, lengthy conversation on the phone is like doing 20 minutes of exercise. It impacts you that hard. Walking to the bathroom. Most people, they have a bathroom in their bedroom. Getting there on some days is an inconvenience because on a bad day, it's all you can do to get there and get back.
Yeah.
It impacts everything. There's no break in it.
Yeah. There's no more clubs. And
Oh, no.
that is not a part. And so how do you manage your day-to-day? And I really want to touch on this because we talked about it before. Like, how do you know when you need to ask for help? Like, how are you managing your day-to-day, and how do you know when something is off and different and that you need to talk to your doctor?
Sometimes, well, generally speaking, I know when I get up in the morning and I go to the bathroom. If I can make it to the bathroom and back without breathing heavy, it's a good day. Some days, when I wake up, I know before I get out of bed because my lungs feel like they hurt. And I know that's a pretty bad day, and it's going to be a trial to get through.
Yeah, and can you talk about that a little bit? You talked about a very big word, or I thought, exacerbations, and what that was, and what was, and what happens.
Exacerbations are what you want to stay far, far away from, and you really can't, because if it gets going, it's going to happen. And once you get there, you have to ride it out. But an exacerbation is a really, really bad series. You get congested, okay, thick yellow mucus. It's like having a cold, but you don't have a cold. It is just everything going haywire. And it's very bad. The congestion in your upper and lower respiratory system is bad. You land in the hospital. It takes very strong antibiotics to knock it loose, and steroids along with that, okay? And you're generally in the hospital for at least a week or two. If you've got it bad, you could be there 3 or 4 weeks. And it's what you want to stay away from, because even once you knock it out, the recuperation period is as long as your extended stay in the hospital. And then you don't bounce all the way back to where you were before you had it. So you want to stay away from that. You want to learn to recognize the signs, and you want to get on top of it as quickly as you can so that you can take what you need to take and break it before it gets going good, because you lose ground every time you have one. And you can get caught in a loop where you go into it, they get you out of it, you go back into it, you come out of it. But each time you come out of it, you gain less ground until you get caught into a loop where you're a downhill slide into the pit.
Right. And so you're telling people that you want them to stop it early, recognize the
You want to
signs.
learn how to recognize the signs. You have to look at the process of what's happening with you and learn to recognize the signs of it beginning. And let your pulmonologist know, yes, get a pulmonologist, okay? And let them know what's going on so they can send you whatever they want to send you, and you can get that started and break it up before it takes hold.
I think that's great advice. And so let's talk a little bit more about COPD. And typically when we think of COPD, we think you just smoked. You must be a smoker. And even if you do smoke, you deserve care, right? We all agree that. But it's not just smoking. And so maybe could you share a little bit about your experience?
I did smoke. Okay, yes, I'll tell it. I did smoke. However, I wasn't a heavy smoker. Be that as it may, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I used to my hobbies were working on cars. We used to do party work. The family had a dual exhaust, 289, 4 on the floor, ragtop Mustang. Okay, that had been in the family since 1964 when they first put it out. Okay, and we kept this thing like a penny. And, getting older, it started developing rust spots and stuff. We had to patch that in. We used to get the patch kits and work on it. And I'd be out there in the backyard, sanding that down and everything, breathing in all that crap, because in 1980, we didn't do masks. We did not do masks, okay? It was just that simple. And then being out in the open, who would even think to? If we did do masks, we wouldn't think to wear it because we're outside in the open. Truth of the matter is there would be this cloud around me, and I was sucking all of that in. I worked for many years as a custodian at the local school. All of those chemicals, those cleaning chemicals and stuff that I was doing the classrooms with and stripping the floors and all of that, breathing that stuff in, that was just clawing my lungs. There's things that you do every day, but you don't think about because it's not something you think, that's not your priority.
Right.
Right. But it's doing you damage, and over the years, it catches up with you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that part. So in terms of, because you've been very gentle in your conversation so far.
I'm on best behavior.
Yeah. But you've had to navigate the healthcare system with your COPD, and you've had to advocate for yourself. So could you just share maybe one challenge that you might have had and how you had to advocate for your COPD care? I can think of a bunch you've shared, but maybe pick one.
It stinks whichever way you go. Okay, when I first started getting sick and they were trying to figure out what was driving what was happening to me, I was still working, okay, using the company insurance, which sucked straight up. Okay, they gave me headaches between the co-pays and what they don't cover, and then when they couldn't figure out what was going on and the doctor needed to delve deeper, what they didn't want to get involved with, headache, okay? And it got no better when I became disabled and then had to switch to government insurance, okay, better known as Medicaid and Medicare. Again, here we go, even more headache, even more restrictions, even more lack of cooperation, for which I gave no quarter for because I worked for 30 years before I became disabled. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm already paid in full, so don't tell me what you're not going to do.
Yes. And how did you sort of navigate that? Because you shared about your file.
I'm a bully.
Well, no, but you shared you had all this experience as a social worker.
Once I got over the shock of the reality of what was going on with me and the gravity of it, and that I realized that I had to deal with it. And so I fell back on my skill set as a social worker because I realized, I said, you know what, I have helped so many people over the years negotiate so many different things. And this, not in depth, but to a certain extent, was part of it. So I sat down and I put on my social worker hat and I looked at it and I set up a system and began to advocate in the areas that I needed to advocate in. I needed to make some adjustments with my healthcare team. I needed to add on members up to my healthcare team. I needed to do some research and find out about what was wrong with me and what I was up against, and figure out questions to ask the physicians when I went to see them so I could have a clearer picture. And that would be another fight because some of them didn't want to be bothered with taking the time. And I had to remind them that if I don't show up, they don't get paid. So you either explain it to me or I switch to another doctor. You have to advocate for yourself. It is so important. You have to take that serious. You must first be invested in your health care before you can expect anyone else to.
Yes. And so you actually said to me that you became your own client.
I did. I became my own client, and I fought for me the way I fought for people over the years.
And had to fire a couple people along the way.
Oh, yeah, I fired a lot of people.
And that's okay.
It is okay. I don't care.
You wanted.
I'm in this to live. Let's make no mistake. I am in this to live for a very long time.
And we know you will. Now, you've also shared, so I know you've advocated for yourself, and it took some time for you to become your own client and do that. But now that you have, how do you help others? Because I know you've done a lot of advocacy work. How do you help others advocate for themselves?
I do this. I do this. I became what is now known as a patient advocate. Okay, and I work with different groups, organizations, and companies who asked me to come and speak to you folks and share my experience, my knowledge, and whatever craziness that comes out of my mouth. And hopefully you find bits of wisdom in this that you can take away and help yourself achieve your health goals.
Thank you. Well, I know I've gotten a couple of pearls of wisdom since I've been here. So sometimes, now this is a very educated audience and everyone seemed to know. There were a lot of hands when Margaret asked what COPD is. But sometimes do you come across people who don't know what it is? And if they don't know what it is, what do you tell them?
I tell them what it is. I give them first of all, I break down COPD and tell them it's chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And then I explain to them that it's a lung disease, okay, that it may have something to do with their smoking if they were a smoker, but it can also be depending upon what their jobs have been over the years, because many people like myself, where they started and where they ended are very different places, okay? So, and the things that they had to do and what was involved, tools, fumes, chemicals, whatever, okay? That makes a difference, and without realizing it, you could have done damage to yourself. Because another thing, back in the day, they weren't big on telling us about being cautious about stuff. Caution was not a thing. It was get the job done. That was the thing.
Right. Great. And now, so now someone knows, if you're talking to someone else now, someone who is just diagnosed with COPD, and we may have some folks in the audience who are in that situation, what would you say to that person, knowing that you've got all this experience under your belt? What would you say to a newly diagnosed person?
The first thing I would say is breathe. breathe, and breathe again. Then once you get your wits about you, you got to come up with a game plan for advocating for yourself. Write down what you don't understand, what you don't know, what you need to find out. Talk to your physician. Work with them. If you're not comfortable with that person, go get another one. And study your condition. Study how it functions with you. Learn the telltale signs, because all of these things are your tools to help you maintain and improve your situation. And you can do so. There was a time that I could not leave my apartment. I could barely move in my apartment. I went to the bathroom and I sat in my chair all day, and then from the chair to the bed for the night. I ran up those stairs this morning.
She did.
And then I walked across the floor, and then I hung around the table. Standing, mind you, I've been running my mouth the whole time. Do you hear me breathing hard? That's what you can do.
So I guess in our last minute here, what's the one thing you want everyone to remember about COPD when they leave here? What's the one thing as we wrap up that you want everyone to know? If they remember nothing else you said, and hopefully they remember a few of your pearls.
You can tame this beast.
Great job. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I just want to thank Margaret for being here with us today and introducing us. And Eugena, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your experience with us. And if you want more information and want to learn more about COPD, we have the COPD Foundation. It's a nonprofit organization. They are down on the C level. Johnny is down there, and she has all kinds of information she can share. And also the Sanofi and Regeneron team is out on this level, out back, so they have more information for you as well. So thank you all for being a great audience, and thank you, Eugena, for being
Have a great day.